These aren't just prisons, they're psychological hellscapes, places that crush the human spirit long before the body gives out. Behind their concrete walls, time slows, sanity fades, and men are stripped of everything that makes them human. You don't need to die to go to hell. For some, hell is already here, inside the world's most brutal prisons.
I thought you had to die to go to hell, but hell is right here.
2. Black Dolphin Prison, Russia, a name that echoes fear across the underworld. Hidden in the frozen Siberian town of Soly-Letsk, near the Kazakhstan border, stands this fortress of despair, officially known as Penal Colony No. 6. It's the final stop for Russia's most dangerous killers, men the state has chosen to erase. This isn't a correctional facility. It's an abyss, a monument to punishment where rehabilitation doesn't exist, only survival. Even from a distance, Black Dolphin looks lifeless. Thick walls of concrete, steel bars, and the silence of broken souls.
Another man, in a drunken killing frenzy, killed 6 of his friends. In this cell, a murderer killed 11 people.
The prison's chilling nickname comes from a black dolphin statue placed at its entrance, carved by inmates long ago. The irony? A symbol of freedom created by men who will never taste it again. Inside, around 700 inmates serve life sentences. Every single one is guilty of crimes so monstrous that society declared them beyond redemption. Together, they are responsible for over 3,500 murders, an average of 5 lives taken per man. This is where Russia hides its nightmares: serial killers, cannibals, child murderers, and terrorists, men whose stories are whispered, never told. Here, mercy doesn't exist. Only endless days of silence, steel, and control.
Supermax is the place that America sends the prisoners it wants to punish the most, a place former Warden Robert Hood describes as a clean version of hell.
I don't know what hell is, but I do know that the assumption would be for a free person, would be pretty close to it.
But what makes Black Dolphin truly terrifying isn't its walls, it's its methods. When prisoners arrive, they're blindfolded, their heads forced down so they can't map the layout. Guards lead them in silence through endless corridors. Even movement becomes disorienting. Deliberate psychological warfare. Inmates must stand for 16 hours every day. They're only allowed to lie down when told to sleep, hands visible outside their blankets. Cells are barely 50 square feet, shared by 2 inmates, constantly watched by cameras. Guards inspect them every 15 minutes. Exercise is allowed just once a day. 90 minutes in a steel cage under open sky, still under supervision. Each cell has 3 steel doors, one behind another, creating what officials call a cell within a cell. There are no escape attempts. Not because it's impossible to try, but because prisoners have long accepted that death is the only way out. Black Dolphin is where the human mind breaks before the body does. But our journey doesn't end in Russia. It continues thousands of miles west, to a place America built for its own monsters, a facility known as ADX Florence, the Alcatraz of the Rockies.
What do you mean by that? It breaks down the human spirit. It breaks down the human psyche. It breaks your mind.
Rising from the barren deserts of Colorado, ADX Florence stands isolated and cold, surrounded by layers of razor wire and silence. Since its opening in November 1994, no one has ever escaped. Not one. Home to around 335 inmates, this is the highest security prison in the United States. A place designed to contain the most dangerous men alive. Each prisoner is locked alone inside a concrete cell, just 7 by 12 feet in size, for 23 hours a day. No voices, no touch, no light of freedom. Former inmates call it a slow-motion death. Even former Warden Robert Hood once described it as a clean version of hell. Here lived the infamous Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, Nuemo 11 conspirator Scariest Moussaoui, and drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. These are not just prisoners, and they are ghosts, locked away where the world can forget they ever existed. Every detail of ADX Florence is designed to control the mind. The walls are solid concrete, reinforced and soundproofed so no one can hear another's voice, or even their own echo. The only window is a thin slit, angled so inmates can't see the mountains outside. They know beauty is close, but forever out of reach. Communication is nearly impossible. Prisoners get 4 short phone calls a month, all heavily monitored. Visits are rare, always behind glass. Over the years, at least 7 suicides have been recorded. Many others simply stop speaking, stop moving, and fade into silence. Its most feared section, Range 13, is where the most dangerous inmates live in complete isolation. No contact, no sound, no sunlight. ADX doesn't torture with pain. It tortures with absence, the absence of everything human. And yet our path grows darker still, because next comes
Prison Camp Guantanamo, one of the most controversial places in the world, and one of the most secretive. Here the American military allegedly jails mainly high-ranking terrorists. We want to find out what the detention conditions in the camp are really.
A small patch of Cuban land controlled by the United States stands one of the world's most controversial detention centers, the Guantanamo Bay Detention Camp. Since opening in January 2002, it has become the symbol of a world without rules, where legal rights vanish and time means nothing. Over 780 people have been held here. Most were never charged, never tried, never even told what crimes they supposedly committed. Some stayed locked up for over a decade without a single day in court. The U.S. government placed the camp outside its borders deliberately, so it could exist in a legal gray zone. Here, the Geneva Convention doesn't apply. Detainees have no constitutional rights. The system was designed so they could disappear without consequence. Former prisoners describe years of beatings, sleep deprivation, humiliation, and forced nudity. 2004, the Red Cross called the treatment inside Guantanamo tantamount to torture. It's not just a prison. It's a statement, a reminder that
The reason the U.S. doesn't comply with the Geneva Convention. This means that the prisoners have no legal rights.
One of the most haunting chapters in Guantanamo's story is the brutal practice of force-feeding hunger strikers, a method as painful as it is symbolic. Over the years, more than 100 prisoners have refused food, choosing starvation over submission. Their message was simple: if the world won't hear us, maybe it will see us die. But death wasn't allowed here. Instead, guards strapped the men into restraint chairs, bound their heads, and pushed thick plastic tubes through their noses, down their throats, pumping liquid nutrients into their stomachs. Some screamed, some fainted, and some simply wept in silence. Medical experts around the world condemned the process as torture, disguised as care. The United Nations called it a violation of human dignity, yet it continued day after day, year after year. And as the world's outrage faded, Guantanamo's story took a darker turn. In 2025, the facility expanded again, no longer just for suspected terrorists, but for migrants. Plans emerged to detain up to 30,000 so-called high-priority criminal aliens within the same razor-wired walls once used for the war on terror. Human rights groups called it a betrayal of everything America claimed to stand for, a transformation of Guantanamo from a prison of war into a prison of politics. Organizations like the International Refugee Assistance Project condemned the move as beyond the pale, warning that the camp had evolved into a symbol of moral decay. Today, Guantanamo isn't just a detention center. It's a monument to fear, secrecy, and power without accountability. It represents what happens when a nation sacrifices justice for control, when human rights are replaced by barbed wire and silence.